I actually brought your.
You brought what?
Your book to sign if you don't.
Oh, hey! Oh, wow! I know. I love yelling at home.
Yeah, well, you can.
Perfect. And then you can just put that clip back. I said I wasn't putting it in.
Yeah.
So that's all set.
Please remind me of your name.
I'm Charlotte. I know. I'm sorry. I realized because I work
Charna?
the other Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Like this year in.
Oh yeah, of
that
course.
Sort of.
Charna. Charna is the name of one of my son's friends. Yeah.
Because I worked the event last time, I in my mind was like, oh yeah, we're best friends.
So how is everything?
I need to like, introduce myself.
Yeah, you have such a nice group here, like
Oh,
Laura
But
and
now we're here.
some.
thanks, Charlotte. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Laura,
for the
I know
record,
from-
I'm not great with names. It usually takes me like 2 or 3 events.
It's so neat.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, what a nice little, what a nice crew
Yeah.
they have here. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you came. How's everything with your? You just have the paperback come out, or nice,
Okay.
Just be nice.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Charlotte.
nice. No, it always feels the paperback always feels
Mike, where did you say the
anticlimactic.
colony is? Connecticut. Okay. Oh yeah, like
You never
New Haven
know, and
style pizza
sometimes you
then,
see the
or-
paperback more, and then sometimes you
Okay.
don't see it anywhere.
Ah,
But at least now they do new paperback covers,
Oh,
so
sweet.
it's like,
Okay.
with a little hope they
Are you
were
from
the
Connecticut
same. And it was
originally,
just
or-
like, eh.
okay, so it's got a double meaning then. It's not like a client and also a. Oh, nice. What's your favorite
So it's
pizza in LA?
mostly just close to my. This was the only big
What's
one,
the
the
difference
big
in the
two
style, too?
out
Yeah,
here,
I mean,
but then they're just like within like a 2-hour distance, so it's not too bad because it was
Well,
it's kind
Joella,
of broken
yeah, we're
up. Like
actually
I had
going there
maybe
tonight
2
after
or 3
this.
events, and then
Yeah.
it was not like
Yeah, they do.
Stephen Rowley or something that had something like every
Well,
single
Prime's
day.
great.
Yeah,
I live
I
right by
don't
the
think
one
I
in
could do
Burbank.
that.
Yeah,
I said to my
Yeah.
wife when I was leaving here, I was like,
yeah.
all that I thought I was, I'm not any of that. Like I'm
Okay,
really
yeah,
a homebody.
yeah.
I
Those are really
thought I
solid
always wanted
choices.
this like jet setting
Yeah.
book tour life, but I'm
Does
fine
anyone
with just
do
doing a
Connecticut
few.
pizza here? Not that I've seen
It
either. I haven't
does.
seen
It is,
Detroit
and it was
pizza
nice.
or-
My brother lives
there's a
near
lot of
Seattle,
styles
and
I
my
haven't
cousin,
seen
so
here.
I got to see them yesterday.
Is there now?
So that was really, really nice. And I never. He's on the West Coast, so
Oh,
I never
haven't
get to
been
see
there yet.
him too much. So, yeah. Tomorrow morning. I know.
Okay.
I wish I could see this more.
Okay.
And then getting here late
And
today.
they do
didn't help
Detroit
either,
style
but-
squared. Okay.
I know. Yeah. I did not want to cancel. Well, that big like
Ah,
technology
sweet.
crash
Okay.
this morning. Yeah. So
Thank you,
everything
Mike.
was like. But then it seemed like it was okay, but then it just kept being delayed like a half hour, and
I was like, I'm not getting on the grid until that Nancy meeting. I'm driven all the way up here.
that was such a nice surprise. I was reading the Book of the Month edition because that was bigger font.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I know. It won't be that long before I'm bringing my large print edition.
I
for it.
know.
Yeah.
I just saw this was the first one they did, the large print one. The cover was so ugly that they showed it to me. And I was like, is that normal for it to be that hideous? But
That's weird.
It
That's
looks
weird
like
that
a
it's a
school, like-
different cover for the
it's
large print
completely
edition.
different. Yeah, it looks like a school like science textbook or something.
That's bizarre. That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, I don't. My wife said it might be a new thing with it because she's in like literacy and all things like that. She
Okay,
said it might be a new
okay.
thing with like contrast and like visual impairment. That would,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know.
But there was something about this layout that was,
It
you
looked
know,
really
didn't
different.
test well with
Yeah, no, I
the large
guess
print crowd.
maybe it doesn't pop enough.
Maybe. Well, it pops plenty to me, but
All right,
yeah.
we're gonna hit
What do I
the
know?
red button now.
Oh, okay.
The top.
Sure.
It's the one up there by
Which
the plug. I can
Okay.
do it also. Yeah, just if you didn't want to.
Thank you. All right.
We're supposed to turn around 6. Oh, cool. Okay. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming to Vivi's. It's always fun to see new faces and repeat faces, which I feel like we're getting tonight. You've even been here as a conversation partner before, so we're really having a good mix. We're very excited to have Ethan. Thank you so much for coming. We'll sort of do a quick, like 30-minute chat, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience, and you guys are going to chat. And then we'll do a signing afterwards. So we have books in the back if you want to come buy a book, and then we'll sign them. So I'll just hand it over. Perfect.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is J. Ryan Stradal. I'm the author of Kitchens of the Great Midwest, Saturday Night at the Lakeside Supper Club, and perhaps they've got it here, the Lager Queen of Minnesota. And it's my pleasure to be here with Ethan and Joella. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Joella, yeah.
I didn't ask. Good boy. I should have asked.
Until you said your last name, I wasn't sure either.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it helps too. And one of the things I'm most excited with talking about with Ethan are, well, a lot of things. Books that are location specific, in which the location is very personal to us and perhaps underrepresented in literature in the case of Delaware and the Northern Midwest. And also restaurants. I mean, we've all been to them. Most of us like them. Many of us have worked in them. And yet it's a rare setting for a novel. And I find it odd that more novels aren't set in restaurants, because they're, in my experience as a former employee of one, they're dens of drama. And
100%.
yeah, particularly family-owned restaurants, which we'll get to in a bit. So that said, I'd like Ethan to read just a little bit, get us into the world and the voice, and then we'll have a chat and open it up to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you to Zibby's for having me. I was so honored, and I was especially honored when I just cold emailed Jay Ryan, and his answer was yes. We followed each other on Instagram, but we really weren't in each other's orbit, and he was so generous, and that just meant a lot. And reading his writing, I think, wow, I gotta be friends with this guy. We have a lot in common with the way we do things. So The Same Bright Stars is about a man who is kind of has a crisis, where he wakes up one morning and it's the day before Thanksgiving, and he has this feeling, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Yeah. And so it really comes upon him. It takes place in Rehoboth Beach, my hometown. So I was really excited to finally bring that into a book. And there's also...
it's the first time you've used it as a setting?
It is, yeah. Maybe... I might have had a short story or something, but
okay.
I don't never had a setting before.
And you live there now, or were you raised there?
I do live there now, yeah. I was raised in northeastern Pennsylvania, but yeah, Rehoboth Beach was our vacation. So every so often there's these little excerpts from the Rehoboth Beach guidebook. So I'm just going to read a little of that and then just read a section, like 5 minutes from the book. I always warn everybody how long it'll be. Don't worry, you won't be bored for too long. And here's from the guidebook. You enter Rehoboth Beach over a drawbridge and instantly feel as if you have been transported. There is a welcome sign and a lighthouse in the middle of a traffic circle, and as you drive the main street, you see boutiques and restaurants and a local bookstore with a wide green awning. In the summer, the shops have geraniums and impatiens spilling out of window boxes, and people leave their rescue dogs waiting for them by the parking meter as they buy croissants or coffee in the morning. The beach is wide and generous, with striped metal sheds that rent umbrellas and chairs in the summer, and there's a mile-long boardwalk with ice cream places and souvenir shops. The rides at Playland Pier have been around since your parents and grandparents were young. A carousel, antique boats that go in a circle with bells on a string, and there are games like skee ball and whack-a-mole and frog bog. Rehoboth Beach is a mix of yesterday and today, at once a small town and a city. Planes creep by in the sky, trailing banners, and you will look up and read their messages and feel as though the words were written just for you. So I'm just going to read to you a little bit from the first chapter. So Jack has this realization. He's had his family restaurant. It's been in his family for 3 generations now. He's the 3rd generation. And it wasn't really an option that he would do anything else, which is some of the themes you see in your book. So he took it over when his father died. He took over the restaurant, and he has this realization that I think I should just sell it to this restaurant group that's been buying up all the things. I think I need a break, and I need to finally live my life. So we see him kind of sitting in his office, mulling over, getting ready for Thanksgiving the next day, which is a big holiday at the restaurant. And Nicole comes, who is the manager of the corporation that wants to buy his restaurant. On the wall in the office is a picture of Jack's grandmother, Hazel, holding him as a baby on the boardwalk, sitting on one of the white benches, the wind blowing her hair, her face relaxed and happy, back in the days before the beach was replenished, when you could jump down onto the sand and walk under the boardwalk. Jack thinks of his dad behind the camera and wonders where his mom was that day. After his mom went away, he and Hazel and Johnny were a trinity, Hazel used to say, and now he's like the only candle on a candelabra that isn't snuffed out. He scribbles down his list for tomorrow. He doesn't know why he writes lists, because they only make him more nervous. But here he notes anyway, Print Thanksgiving coloring sheets, light candles by 10, tell Sam only instrumental music to keep the crowds calmer. Check with Vincent, can his niece bus? Check linen service, unclog carpet sweeper, wash bar towels. He pauses, cut extra lemons and limes and oranges. The list is getting so sloppy he can barely read it when Vivian sticks her head in the door. Your lover's here, Schmidt, she says in a high voice and smirks, and immediately Jack expects Kitty to walk in. Would she show up without telling him first? He feels unkempt and unprepared and not in the right headspace to see her. But then he realizes Vivian's referring to Nicole Pratt from Deldine, who Vivian has taken to calling his girlfriend, also his wife, his lover, his soulmate. Ugh. Oh, he says, okay, I'll be out in a second. I'm right here, Nicole says behind Vivian, and Vivian's face looks glazed, the scratch on her cheek even more noticeable for a second, like a big apostrophe. Jack raises his eyebrows and waves Vivian off. Nicole steps into his office. Guess she didn't know I followed her. Nicole is the general manager of the company that wants to buy Schmidt's. She wears tortoiseshell glasses and black pants and always a sweater, even in summer. She regularly drops by to see if Jack has any questions about their offer, and even though he doesn't like anything about Deldine, he somehow doesn't mind her too much. She's easy to be around. Busy day, she says, looking around. Holidays are pretty busy. Don't I know it, Guy? Without asking, she scoops up the paperwork from a chair and plops down. I'm beat, she says. We're doing a party for Doug Gable Realty at the pier, and it keeps getting more and more fancy. She tugs lightly on the ring she wears on her necklace. They're hiring a whole crew for music and video and lighting. What the heck happened to a PowerPoint and CD player? She rolls her eyes. When she turns to look out the window, the light hits her face, and Jack thinks of something his grandmother would have said. That one has nice high cheekbones. She groans and rests her hands on her stomach and slouches in the chair. When did people become so high maintenance? You think it just happened? Jack gives her a polite smile. He needs to finish his list, and he doesn't know why she's here on the day before the busiest day. He feels guilty having his employees see her now that he's seriously considering selling. Customers have been annoying since the word customer was invented. She puts the arm of her glasses in her mouth. Did Shakespeare create that word like everything else? He notices for a second how pale blue her eyes are, like mist. Maybe, Jack says. He glances down at the list and he gets a sharp pain between his eyebrows. Tomorrow is coming like a hypersonic missile. He looks at her and clears his throat. So, nothing's really new, he says, and tries to sound decisive so she'll get the hint. But she stays put. She slips her glasses back on, picks up a Shore Life magazine from his desk, and starts flipping through it. Her brown hair is messy today. I figured. She takes a breath. I just needed to get away from holiday party planning, Thanksgiving planning, the screech of all the assistant managers. I told them they sounded like porpoises today. She takes off her glasses again and wipes them on her sweater. She points to the magazine. Hey, look, they're resurrecting the Turtle Trot. Sometimes Jack can't believe Nicole has reached such a high level in a company that takes itself so seriously. The people she works with would eat a child to get promoted. Soulless, always on their phones, working 5 a.m. until midnight. Nicole is the most unserious person Jack knows, and he barely knows her. I don't know what the Turtle Trot is. She snorts. How the hell did you grow up here? Remember Skippers and Dewey? They used to have a turtle trot every Christmas. You ran a 5K and then you drank for the rest of the day and danced, and they'd put out all this fried shrimp and burgers and barbecued chicken. It was amazing. She taps her finger on the ad in the magazine. All the money went to the Sea Life Orgs and the state park. You remember, she says accusingly. Sounds familiar, Jack says, but in my defense, there are a lot of 5K events around here. She smiles sadly. It's where I met Billy. She says the name with such care. Billy? My husband? Her pale blue eyes have something in them, an emotion Jack can't identify, but they look frosted for a second. Jack glances at the ring on her necklace. He'd forgotten she used to be married. Her husband was killed in Iraq. She tosses the magazine to the side and stands up. Okay, well, I'll leave you to your, she looks at his list, whatever that jumble is. Thanks for dropping in. Oh, I wanted to ask, did you look over the packet with your lawyer? It outlines everything. The announcement, transition, the bonus if it's before the end of the year, the projected plans. She pauses. Your lawyer is Andy Stone? Jack nods. She's the best. She's married to my friend. Thought so, she says. I do CrossFit with her. Well, to be honest, she kicks ass in CrossFit and I give up and cheer for the rest of them. He looks down at his list, and I haven't really looked at anything with regard to the sale. She shrugs. I feel like you're getting ready, Jack, she says and smiles. Her eyes have returned to their usual playfulness. Me? I'm too young. She pauses and looks very closely at him, those eyes so intense they almost make him wince. We all want more than just a job, and if you partner with us, we'll take the burden and give you the gift of freedom. She looks at the picture of his grandmother holding him she's walking out. Cute, she says. Why do you say partner, he asks. It's not partnering, it's turning everything over. It's selling and being finished with the business forever. She shrugs. Partnering sounds nicer. She pushes the office door all the way open. And now I'm hiding at Coffee Days for a half hour. She holds a folder in front of her and looks at him. Want to tag along and hide too? Oh, no thanks, he says. He stands and watches her leave, nodding to Sam, to Vivian, to the couple of tables of people who've come for lunch. It feels like it should be evening already, but outside the sun is bright and generous. For a second, and he has no idea why, he almost feels like he should have gone with her.
Right, really quick craft question. Great reading. Do you write in chronological order, knowing your ending, or do you not know your ending and then go back and edit once you do it?
That's a really good question. I have a vague idea of where I hope the characters end up with, but I'm never locked into the ending because I feel like I'm more of an intuitive writer, that I like the characters to surprise me, and I like them to kind of crawl off the page and show me what they've decided they want, what they've decided they're good for. So I try to write in chronological order, but sometimes I jump around. I wish it wasn't such a mess. I wish writing wasn't such, I wish I could just do the, because even if we go into a shopping mall or something, I like to start at one end logically and work my way back.
Sure.
And I wish the novel was exactly that way, that you could just lay the pages down as you did them. But yeah, it's always a mess, unfortunately.
Oh, wow. That also does leave the door open for discovery and surprise. So yeah, I totally get it. Well, this is your third novel. How do you do it? How was the creation of this book different for you than the ones that preceded it? And did you give yourself a different challenge this time around?
Yeah, I think so. I think it. My hope is always that the next novel will be simple and it will be clear and and I'll keep a tight focus. But I think by now I've finally learned that it's never going to be easy, but you're always going to be okay. And that okay means even if you have to scrap something completely, which I've had to do, even if you have to put 200 pages aside and start something completely fresh, but you'll be okay and you'll figure it out. This was different because this was a singular character and a singular point of view. And my other books were like A Little Hope had 12 different characters with 12 different points of view. A Quiet Life had three strands of three storylines. So this was nice in that regard to just stay with one character, but I can't help myself. Then I just start branching out, and then I added in the guidebook and the 1989 memories here. I can't help myself.
Oh, that's a lot of fun. The book's primary setting is Delaware, where you live, but I know that the setting wasn't just one of geographical convenience. So tell us about why you chose that setting and what it means to you as a writer and a reader.
I think I've always been interested. My family and I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, but my dad's family started going to Rehoboth Beach in the 50s, and then he and my mom always took us there. They bought a house when you could still buy a house back in the days. So Rehoboth was always such a special place for me. It always, like, even living there now all these years, I still always feel like I'm on vacation being there. I just like look around and there's something just so marvelous about it. But when I was young and I used to be there, I was always so curious about the people that lived there year round, about how do you have a town where it's not always yours, that you're opening it up to this big tourism industry all summer. And I always wondered, I thought, well, what did like a high school kid in May, like, are they able to go to the boardwalk? Do they go to the boardwalk after school? It must be so cool to like just come home and go to the beach, or just eat like boardwalk fries on a school night. So I was always really curious about that. And I think I was trying to show here what your life is like when you're kind of presenting your town to people that come and visit. Because I often marvel at the fact that people will come for 4 days in the summer and they'll do more all summer. They'll do more in those 4 days than we do all summer. I think we went to the beach one time last year because you don't do those touristy things. You're kind of hiding out. You're strategizing. You're like, well, if we want to go out for dinner, we have to go at 4 o'clock because we're not going to wait in line. Or we go grocery shopping at like 6:30 in the morning and like roll our eyes at the year-round employees that like, how are you handling it? How are you managing? How are you hanging in there? So I think Rehoboth has that nice mixture of small town but city, and it also has, I think, a great like cinematic stuff for a book for like the coastline. But then there's country also. There's wooded areas. So I always wanted to put that into a book, but it had to come in the right situation. And I found it. I had started to do a Delaware beaches collection where there were all these different stories, and it just became a mess. And that's what I scrapped aside and just one guy, one town.
Yeah. Okay. Were there any other Delaware set books that were an influence to you?
I don't know of any other Delaware
Yeah, I know.
set
Me
books.
neither. Yeah.
You know, I do. Ann Tyler sometimes uses like Bethany Beach.
Sure.
Because a lot of people from Baltimore, she's always Baltimore, but a lot of people from Baltimore will go to Bethany Beach or Dewey or Rehoboth. So, yeah, I remember. I think she had part of her book was set in Bethany, one of them, but I can't think of many other. There's one. I'm going to think of it, but
okay, yeah.
but
if any of you know of one, shout it out. But yeah, it was a first for me, and I thought that was really cool. I mean, as a kid growing up in Minnesota myself, I didn't see Minnesota mentioned that often in the books I was reading, and I really set out consciously as an author to include very specific Minnesota settings in my books, and so it really resonated with me as a reader to see someone doing that for their state, and I thought that's pretty cool. You know, because who knows? Yeah, there could be high school kids in Delaware reading this book and feeling that sense of being seen, in the sense that we're on the map, like we're worth writing about.
And I have gotten that on both ends, and I love that. I've gotten people that live there. You got it right. You've told everyone what it's like. You've shown it, but then other people who've never been here say, "Oh, I'd love to visit Rehoboth Beach." So it's nice to see on both ends there.
Yeah. All right, now on to the family-owned restaurant Schmidt's, which is the heart of your novel. Is Schmidt's based on a particular place? And tell us why writing about a locally owned restaurant was important to you.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer. I mean, I'm always singing the praises of like indie bookstores, but I think we have, especially in coastal Delaware, there are a lot of those restaurant groups that have bought up every independent restaurant, and it's fine. And I don't want to step on their toes either. I don't want them to come after me. No, I'm just kidding. No, but they're really great employers for like a lot of my students. Jobs there, and they get promoted through there, and they're great employers as well. But I think we still need those independent voices. I think that's still really important. So I'm always like throwing little rocks at things like that. But no, so Schmidt's was not an actual place that I imagined, but I think it is kind of like this dream woven of all the different restaurants my parents used to take us throughout the beach. And there was always that one restaurant that wasn't like the most amazing food, but it was like dependable and sweet and like decent prices. My wife's family used to go to Wildwood, and I would take the ferry across and meet her there. Wildwood in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
And so there was a really old restaurant there, and I think that kind of affected me. That kind of influenced me. And they would have like pies there, and just like you'd see the same servers working there year after year. And that closed down too. But so yeah, Schmidt's was not a real place, kind of an amalgamation of all these different restaurants. But when I wanted to do the research and I wanted to make it seem authentic, because my restaurant experience was when I was 15 and 16. I was a busser, and I worked at fast food. I worked at McDonald's. So I didn't have the current restaurant experience that I needed, or the restaurant owner experience. So I reached out to in Fenwick Island. There's a family run restaurant there, and the guy was so nice to me. His name is Scott Mumford, and he gave me his cell phone number. I called him 5 or 6 times. I would ask him the craziest. I said, if an employee wanted to steal from you, how would they do that? And he was amazing. Yeah. And then he was closed in the off season, and he texted me one day. He said, I'm going to be at the restaurant tomorrow. Do you want to come and I'll give you a tour? It was so helpful to see all that stuff.
Yeah. Just get the layout.
And even just getting I could really start to feel his life there, because he said, "This is I barely see my daughter all summer, because I'm so happy I'm off during the year, because then that's when I go to all her things." But he said, "This is the couch I sleep on if I grab like a 10-minute nap. This is where I go to stand when I go and look at the ocean here," because he has like a private little balcony in the back, and he said, "This is where I go to just kind of take a breath there." So yeah, that really helped. He showed me a prep sheet that he had, and I said, this would be really valuable. He ripped it right off and gave it to me. Man. I mean, as a writer, you dream for that type of research.
Oh, that's the details. I love that.
Yeah.
I knew a restaurant owner in St. Paul whose daughter wouldn't pick up the phone if he called her before 9 p.m. because she knew he was calling to get her help at the restaurant.
I'm sure that's
Yeah.
how it goes.
Yeah, and so when he finally sold his restaurant in 2016, she's like, "Great, now I can hang out with my dad again in the afternoons and evenings." And
It's
yeah,
all encompassing.
yeah, no, it is. It really is, especially these resort places. And I know they exist to different extents here in Santa Monica and Venice, but like in places like Rehoboth Beach or northern Minnesota, where I used to go, they're much more stark peaks and valleys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're like in Lake Country, Minnesota, like the Brainerd Lakes area. It's completely dead in the winter unless you're a snowmobiler or a deer hunter. And yeah, they have to figure out. That's when they go on vacation.
Yeah.
Like in February.
No, that's
yeah,
100%.
I remember talking to a woman who I never had a summer off. Everyone was talking about summer vacation. That was a tautology to her. It just felt like someday maybe, like at some point in my life, decades from now, I'll go on vacation in the summer.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I love how you mentioned this, and you talk about the complexity surrounding this character Nicole, and I just love Nicole because she's the book's most antagonistic force throughout. Then she's part of this restaurant group, which even you admit is based on restaurant groups that aren't entirely evil.
No.
And they're presented in the book through this complex and often likable character. So what inspired Del Dine in this portrayal of Nicole?
Well, there's definitely some Del Dine-esque groups in the Rehoboth area.
Yeah.
And when I was doing the launch event, which was in Rehoboth, people were like, "I'm like, this is fiction. Don't worry." Because there are similar ones, so it's not based on any direct one. But I try to show how complex we all are. Like even with Ziggy, and there's an addict who causes a lot of stress for his mother. But I really try to show like the range of different people. And I didn't want Nicole to be like this stereotypical corporate culture person. I wanted her to have this kind of range. Like, all right, so she works for a corporate place, but she is still she's a widow of an Iraq vet. She all this stuff that she's dealing with it. She's human, and she's so unflappable and so confident that I really enjoyed writing her. I just kind of would bring her into scenes that she wasn't even supposed to be in. I would just, all right, let's have her show up at Thanksgiving dinner and see what she does, because she's one of those people I think that you're just always kind of watching because they're just so interesting. And and I like that she was the face of this corporate place, and the corporate culture was so gross in a kind of way, but she made it her own. She wasn't afraid of what they thought of her.
That's right.
She did her own thing.
Yeah, no, she's a wonderful character, and it's what's the word? It's a credit to your talent as a writer to thread that needle and create this character who, by most measures, we'd regard as the villain or antagonist at the very least. And you make her so likable and so fun to watch.
Well, and I think there is some truth in that too, because we would have restaurants that we would go to when our girls were little too, and some of the managers were so kind to them and so like asking them what they wanted to be for Halloween. So I think that just comes out in that people are complex and multidimensional. Yeah,
and there's such a strong sense of community in the book. I mean, all the supporting characters, you mentioned Ziggy, are so clearly and strongly portrayed. The world they inhabit, though not without its problems, is a little utopian. Now, tell me about the impulse, to write about a setting from a more hopeful point of view. And you talk about this restaurant being kind of a platonic ideal of the restaurants you've been to as a kid, and what it's like to write a hopeful story in these times.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I think that just comes because I am an optimist of the heart of it. I still, even though as old as I am, I still have that naivete. Like if I see a product on Home Shopping Club or QVC, I can't even watch that because I always believe, I'm like, all right, well, we don't have those dust rags. Those will do a better job than the dust rags. I believe it 100 and again, I'm like, well, we need that mop. That our mop does not do what that mop is going to do.
Right.
So I think that kind of naive part of myself comes through, and I love when things do resolve themselves well, but I feel like you can't cheat. And so if it's because I'm still a big believer in realism and that you have to show life as it is and people as they are. So
Yeah.
I do like that utopian world. Like an example is like Schitt's Creek or something, where
There you go.
there's nobody homophobic in there. There's nobody that's racist in that town, and it's kind of beautiful to see that to imagine that. So yeah, but not done in a sappy kind of way, not done in a, I think you said like a treacly kind of way. So it is the balance there, because I am a hopeful person, but sometimes the world is dark. But so I balance those two, and if it can work out organically and it can work out in a realistic way, it does. But sometimes bad things happen too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and it's refreshing, to read a hopeful story, but it grounds you to get those elements that are in concert, that are pushing against that hope. Someone told me once, if you want to disappoint or upset readers, write a short story. And if you want to give them a sense of hope, write a novel. I think that's generally true, because if you're going to sit down, I don't know how long it took you to write this book. It takes me about 3.5 years to write a novel. I don't have a sense of hope while writing it. I don't know if I can finish it. It's like I'm not going to spend 3.5 years writing it just to disappoint somebody.
No.
But I feel like I also want to put into the world a vision of the world I want to see. And if I'm going to spend that much time occupying a fictional realm, I want it to be one I enjoy being in. Yeah. And that seemed to be true for you. Like Schmidt seems like a place that you'd hang out at.
Oh, 100%. And I'm so drawn toward decency, and I'm drawn toward people that are decent, and people that and not like in a Mr. Rogers kind of way. Like, I mean, I have the nasty parts about myself, whatever. But I think that it's so nice when people do like ask about how someone's doing, or like, and I do think a lot of my characters end up that way, like that they're decent in these little ways. Like they're imperfect, but they're kind of noble in these little ways. And I guess that is an ideal version of life, but there are a lot of good people out there too.
Yeah. Now, I made space for you to read a second excerpt. At this point, do you have one that speaks to that, or what's the tone of this other excerpt?
Yeah, this is. I have one about Jack's beach chair. About
which is on the cover.
His want there, and it's a little. It's not as long as the previous one. So Jack, it's a stressful time because his ex Kitty is back in town, but he had a really good relation because her mother is dying, and he had a really good relationship with his ex's mother. After Kitty left, he barely saw her mother except for one day in the boardwalk 5 and 10 before it closed. It was a busy summer afternoon about 4 years ago, hot as hell outside, and one of those times where he felt like a goddamn mole never leaving the restaurant. He went outside that afternoon, put sunglasses on, and trudged down the boardwalk. The beach was crammed with people, the lifeguard whistles punctuating the air every so often, the smell of funnel cake and caramel corn in the breeze. You could hear bicycle bells from the street, and Jack took a deep breath, tried to absorb the day. He walked and walked, looking down at his own pale legs. He was 2 years away from 50 then. He saw people going into the 5 and 10, a mother standing by her son, looking at the hermit crabs in the cage. Whichever one you want, she said, and kissed him. He doesn't know why, but he went inside. He felt like buying something, tired of making money and never spending it. He watched people getting sunblock and flip-flops. The faded floor tiles were streaked with spilled soda, and the cash register hammered out prices onto the receipts, one purchase after another. He saw a big display of beach chairs in the back of the shop. Overpriced, yes, but so bright, blue and yellow with slings to carry them, and next to them a mountain of buckets and sand toys. As people passed him, he wanted a slice of whatever they were getting. These people were coming to Rehoboth and experiencing days of perfect bliss. Reading books, laughing with friends, holding sandy kids on their laps, feeling the sun on their faces. Jack grabbed a blue beach chair, the nicest one they had, $50 or something like that, and he held it against himself, the tag hanging from it. He couldn't explain it, but it felt so new and immaculate against him, like a key to building a good future. It had 4 positions and a drink holder. He promised himself that one day, soon he'd take that chair and sit in the sand and look at the ocean, something he hadn't done in ages, and he'd try to be happy. Well, hello, Jack, he heard then, and it was Janet, Kitty's mom. That's a nice purchase. Hey, Mrs. Applebaum, he said, and leaned the chair against his leg as she reached up to hug him. She smelled like the coconut suntan oil she always wore, and she looked so much younger and more refreshed since those days after Mr. Applebaum died. I needed a new one, Jack said, looking down at the chair. She smiled. I thought I was the only one braving Tourist Central. She held the paperback in her hands, a mystery. She loved them, read one a day by the pool. He glanced back in the direction of the restaurant as if he could see it through the walls. I just needed a break. After he said this, she stared at him for a few seconds and nodded. She walked alongside him toward the cash register. She stopped and picked up an ashtray with Rehoboth written in the center and balanced it in her palm. She picked up one of those beer can koozies with a palm tree on it and squeezed. How are you managing, Jack? He let his shoulders relax for a second. He imagined pulling the chair open and plopping down in it right there. He wondered how long he could be gone before the restaurant needed him. We're doing great, busy as ever. Couldn't ask for more. Not the restaurant, she said carefully. You. Oh, not bad, he said, and avoided eye contact while he handed the chair to the guy behind the counter. He made the go-ahead motion and smiled, and she put her paperback down by the cash register. He shooed her when she tried to give him money for it. No, my treat, he said. She patted his shoulder and took her bag. Thank you. It was lovely seeing you. She looked at his beach chair. Enjoy it, she said. She wore her sunglasses on her head and placed them over her eyes. He wanted to ask what Kitty was up to, if she had met someone, if she was as happy as she thought she'd be, away from here, away from him. He took the beach chair back to the restaurant and hung it over a hook in an upstairs closet where it still waits. Every once in a while, he catches a glimpse of it behind a broom, underneath a raincoat some customer left a while back, and the bright blue calls out to him. He always pauses for a second before quickly closing the door.
Very nice. All right, now I've got a couple industry/craft questions for you, if that's of any interest to the audience. Maybe there's a lot of aspiring authors who struggle to discern a clear path to success. So tell us, what was your route to becoming a published novelist, and what was the most crucial element?
Well, if you are discouraged, then I am your guy. Because, I had before I found my agent for A Little Hope, I had 4 or 5 books I had written that just went under the bed, went lost on a laptop somewhere. That I just they were the fertilizer.
Real quick, you have an MFA?
I have an MFA. Yeah.
So one of them was that thesis.
Yeah, like a short story collection.
Oh,
with that.
okay.
But I for 20 years I was trying to get published. Graduate school and kids and work and all that stuff. You kind of have that little flame, and you forget about it for a little while, but you keep coming back to it. But I got rejected by hundreds of agents over and over again. It was just, and I had no connection. I mean, I grew up in small town Pennsylvania. I had no friends that were writers. I had none of that. So it was just, I knew if I wanted to get it done, it would have to be me getting lucky, me finding the right person there.
Did you have any resources or professional development instruction from your MFA program?
No, and that's what I thought. I thought maybe in the MFA somebody would take you under their wing and say, "Don't worry, I sent this to my editor, and they're going to publish it. Don't worry." I had a lot of good teachers, a lot of good mentors there that encouraged me to be better. But in 2010, I joined the Rehoboth Beach Writers Guild, and they were like my grown-up MFA. They were like my post-MFA.
Yeah.
Just because there were so many smart people who just talked about writing in such a sophisticated way, and kept. I think you need to be around people who encourage you to be better and who will critique your stuff and be complimentary toward you, but also to be frank with you about what's working, what's not working. That was real. I mean, I think the Writers Guild really changed my life for that, and just
the Rehoboth Beach Writers Guild.
Yeah, and and I'm president of the board now for that. Wow. I mean, I don't really do anything in that role, but I'm a puppet.
Well, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Work your way up to a sinecure.
Exactly, but I still teach for them, and it's just so rewarding.
So cool.
It's absolutely love it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think that just inspired me. I think a writer needs nurturing, and I think being with a group that you see them getting better and you're getting better, and it sparks that thing to keep talking about.
And the first group in terms of ages and background.
It's very, very different. A lot of retirees too, and so people who, because Delaware has a lot of retirees, Rehoboth has a lot of retirees, so people that lived in Washington D.C. and were judges or lawyers or teachers that have all this intelligence, and they don't know where to put it. So we're just so lucky that a lot of them end up in Rehoboth and want to write. So,
that's great.
Yeah, so finally then in 2019, I had one novel that I felt really good about. I kept getting rejected, but I thought I'm only going to send out 3 queries tonight, 3, and then I'm going to give up on this one and move on to my next one. And one of those was a hit.
With the agent, and it's with an agent you still are
with an
today?
agent I'm still with. Yeah. So
Who is he or she?
So
Or they?
Madeline Milburn, she's in the UK.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because I had burned all my bridges in New York. I could find an agent and search my email, and they'd rejected me 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And even the nice ones would be like, "Oh, he's sending me something
still no.
again."
Yeah.
I was nice to him. I pet the dog now, and now he's sending me something again. And they, so I wrote her, and I was reading Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine at the time.
Right, British.
And she
British
was
writer,
she was the agent for that book.
Whoa, okay,
so I thought
there
that
you
was
go.
like really
Gail
meant to
Honeyman,
be. Yeah. So that was, so she wrote me back. She said, I want to see the whole thing, and I'm flying to New York. And I said, oh, we're going to be in New York. We bought my daughter Broadway tickets for her birthday. It was like this weird, glorious, serendipity that it just happened that way. And the day we met her in New York, it was one of those beautiful September days. And I looked at my wife and I said, I don't care if nothing ever comes of this. This is just such a Cinderella kind of moment that you just, and along the way, I mean, I would have sold to anybody. I remember Matt Damon saying about Good Will Hunting, and one of those, that he would have sold it for a piece of chicken or something.
Yeah, right.
I would have made any changes. I would have cut out characters I loved, but to find a person that was so esteemed and valued your writing, it was just it was so worth the wait.
Oh, fantastic. That's
it was really good. So don't be discouraged by rejection.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Wow. That's awesome. If you could go back and talk to the Ethan Joella who had just signed that first book deal, what would you tell him?
I think I would tell him, just don't worry about all those outside things. Don't worry about what other writers are doing. Don't worry about what sales numbers or anything like that. You have to keep just keep focusing on good writing, and that's all you need to care about. Don't worry about all the others. I think the other stuff is secondary. I think you just have to be as generous as you can with other people, but focus mostly on just your writing. Don't get distracted by all those other things. Don't get distracted by reviews. It was when I got my first publishing contract, it was like a day before COVID. It was like when they bought my book like March 10th, 2020. It was like one of the last meetings they had in the New York office building. So it was a very strange first book experience. But
so is this your first book tour then?
My first West Coast book tour.
Okay.
Because A Quiet Life was out in 2022. So it was a little.
Okay, so you got a little bit.
It was a little bit calmer then.
I have another friend, Christy Clancy, who lives part-time in Palm Springs, and her first 2 books came out in 2020 and 2022, and so
people were heartbroken. That was really tough.
So one final question. We'll turn it over to you. What have you been reading this year? Are there any authors or books, particularly ones you feel are overlooked, that you'd like to recommend?
I don't. Well, I just finished this recently, and I cannot recommend Jay Ryan's book enough. It's smart and it's sweet and it's nostalgic and it's great writing. I mean, it's just everything that you want there. Let's see what else. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Has anyone read?
That's literally on a stack next to me.
I really like that, and I was really into that. Awesome. Let's see.
Have you read this? This is great.
No, I haven't.
It's a lot of fun.
No,
it's a great food. Food story set in a restaurant. If you're a fan of restaurant set narratives, this is an excellent one.
Yeah. Oh, I would like that.
Yeah. The father-daughter team that create meals from people's pasts.
Oh, very nice. I would like that. There's a new book called
I guess that's sort of an Ann Tyler book too, though, isn't it? There's that book I heard from the early '80s. I forget what it's called.
Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant.
Yes.
I read all of it.
She was my one thread in that.
Love Ann Tyler.
This is the whole story.
That's interesting. There's a book called, I think, Yukiko. I can't think of her last name. I think it begins with a T. It's called See Love, See Also Loss. I love that book. I was so. It's about a woman she lost her husband, but she has her mother-in-law is just hanging out with her, and it's just really a beautiful story about grieving and about just trying to move on. And they're so different, the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, and just such different values, but they really play off each other well.
Yeah. All right, let's turn it over to you folks. Thank you. If you've got any questions, we'd love to hear them. Comment?
Pairing is just ideal.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, you both just write salt to the earth characters, and they're. I always describe them as like sweet books for smart readers. Like,
Oh,
they're not
wow.
fluff,
That's so
they're
kind.
not-
Wow.
So I just love you both.
Thank you.
But Ethan, my question for is that really you on Instagram answering every single post?
That's me, 100.
We
Yeah.
argue among ourselves that like review books, like, oh, that was someone's PR or that was
That
someone's
is-
intern, and you were like the darling of Bookstagram. And
Wow.
I-
so
you know,
I just have to know if it's really you.
For
And you
some,
can tell the truth.
it's 100. I wouldn't trust anyone. I'm a control freak, so I wouldn't trust. But you know what? It's all gravy because I feel like we're so lucky as writers to have that kind of community where people talking up your books and people saying such beautiful things and taking aesthetic pictures of them. I mean, I feel like we're so lucky, and I know for some authors it's not possible that you just get so many. So like on Pub Day, I could not.
No.
I could not keep up with it, and it made me sick because I hate not. I'm Italian and Irish. I hate not saying thank you to somebody. I hate not giving a gift or something like that. So it's. But no, that is. But it's the easiest thing I do all day because it's so nice. It's really rewarding for me. So it's kind of like a de-stressor for me at different points of the day that I can stop my grading or stop my writing.
This
And
unit behind the scenes, everyone's squealing. He didn't respond to me. It makes our day.
Oh, that's so
oh, I
cool.
love that. I love hearing that. Thanks.
Right?
Yes.
The restaurant, I grew up going to Ocean City
Mm.
and Phillips Crab House.
Oh, nice.
Phillips
Mm.
Crab.
I've never been Ocean City, Maryland.
Yeah.
Oh, Phillips. It was like the King. It was like that. Yeah, we went there maybe.
Everybody wanted to work.
Yeah, that was, and that just closed a few years ago, right?
Yeah, it did. It's sold.
We went there one time before that. What's the Winterfest of Lights that they do? And they do it at, like around the holidays. They do like you ride the tram through it. We went there one time and it was kind of on its last legs. It was a little sad by that point, but yeah, that's definitely that old nostalgic kind of restaurant. Oh, good. I hope you like it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
I think I asked you this one time. How do you come up with your character names?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
Yeah,
I thought about that too, like what these character names are.
Kitty.
Well, that's
Yeah,
right.
Ziggy and Ziggy.
Ziggy
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Sometimes they come right away, but then I think, wait, have I used that before? And then I get to the point where I feel like I've used every name possible, like or something similar. Like in my first book, I had a woman named Freddie, and then my second book, I had Frida. And my editor was like, no, we're not doing Freddie and Frida. So I look at baby name books. I look at name generators. I look at like if I'm doing it like someone born in the 70s, what were the popular names then? But it takes a while. Some come right away, and some I'm like playing around with and changing them until the last minute, or still calling them their old names. So I used to have like a hard copy of like a baby name book with all these creepy dog ears on it and stuff. But there are certain names that I love that I haven't used yet that I want to find the right character. Like I love the name Daphne. I think that's such a cool name, and I don't think I've used that in a book yet. But don't take that. So yeah, I like names.
What do your students think of what you do?
Nothing. Once in a while, someone will like send me a link. Like, is this you? And like, yeah. But it like. 19, 20-year-olds, nothing impresses them. My own kids, like,
I was going to say, yeah.
My kids were never impressed by any of this until Alexandra Daddario recommended my book for Book of the Month, and that was the only time I had like some credibility with them. Yeah, but my student, on the day A Little Hope came out, though, it was on the Today Show, and I was teaching that day. And that was a surreal moment because I never told my family, like my parents and stuff, that I was writing. I always kept that like an alter ego. Because then if you tell them that, then it's like, so what are you writing? Did you get published? Yeah.
Right,
so I never really, I kept those two parts of teaching so separately. But on the day A Little Hope came out, they said it might be on the Today Show that day. So I put it on for my students. I was like, I think there might be something about this book I wrote. And they're like, what book did you write? And all of a sudden, like Hodo Copy and Jenna are holding my book there, and the students are like, "You?" So it was a really strange, fun moment. The two worlds collide at that point. But beyond that, they're not impressed by anything.
How do you decide what voice you're going to tell a story in? It's so much
Wow, that's a-
whether it's first person or omniscient or
That's a really good question. Do you want to take that first?
Sure, I'll-
where they're written in two voices going chapter to chapter.
Oh wow! For me, I like writing third. I like writing close third, so I get that interiority, but I
Mhm.
also feel like I'm telling a story. I've never tried write first, at least not since I was writing short stories. And usually I write chapters until I keep one. With the book I'm writing right now, 5 chapters in, I've thrown away maybe 5 or 6 chapters. It took me that long to figure out, oh, this is who this person is. This is what's important to her. This is how she sees the world. This is the filter through which information is processed, and this is how she does it. Yeah, it's just that simple. And then I know her language, and I know how she sizes up the world.
But she's not telling the story.
Now she is. Yeah, now she's kind of taken over, and she's like, "This is what I'm going to do." Yeah, that happened about 2 weeks ago.
And that's when you know you've got the.
I
great
started writing
character.
this book in January, and it was just about 2 weeks ago that like she kind of took the reins and said, "You know, I'm in control now. You can just sit back and take dictation." And so that's fun. I like, but it took me 6 months to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I always loved first person, and I always wanted, like, as a young writer, that was what I think like John Updike A&P or Catcher in the
Oh,
Rye. I
yeah,
just
yeah.
love that first person.
Dennis Johnson.
This actually started out in first person. The whole thing
Hmm.
was in first person,
Hmm.
and my
Wow.
editor was like, "I don't think it's working in first person." And
Huh.
I was so, and she was completely right. It was too claustrophobic. It was too interior. You needed that close third, I think, to have a little bit more formality, a little bit more objectivity, maybe. But it's you can't just like do find and replace, change all the he's to eyes, change all the.
Place all the eyes. Oh my god.
It's such a different.
Hilarious.
It's such a different casual. First person
Yeah.
is so much more casual that the perspective you get doesn't really make sense with third. So that was a big rewrite. But I'm glad. I can't imagine it now in first, but.
So in omniscient in third person, do you talk about what people think, or would a third person not know it?
Yeah, you can if you're doing third omniscient. So there's like third limited. There's third in the head and over the shoulder, right? Third.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of scared of omniscient. Because I don't know where to stop there. I like to have parameters with my writing. So I don't think I've ever done anything in omniscient.
So who's telling this story?
It's a close narrator. So the camera is kind of like over Jack's shoulder,
Mhm.
but also in his head.
Mhm.
But it can be more removed. You can do it more of like an objective third.
Is there a book that talks about different voices?
Yeah,
A number
there's
of them,
yeah. There's a lot of and I have overhead notes that I stick in my. I can send those to you too. Yeah, there's a lot of the craft books will go into that. Probably Stephen King's on writing. Or
yeah. That's a great one.
Stephen King's book on writing.
If you haven't read
Bird
that
by
yet,
Bird by Ian Lamont might
those two are
talk
excellent.
about those.
Excellent. Diane, you had another question.
Oh, I just wanted to ask about both the well, I've read this book and it sounds like this book. The whole idea of a family business and the pressures on children to continue the family business. Just curious if either of you have had that, or you just thought it was interesting to write about, and kind of what you think about that either gift or burden that parents give to their children. It can be something wonderful that you're passing down to your children, but if the children aren't particularly interested, then they can feel like they're disappointing their parents if they don't want to continue the business. So just curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know about you want to go first?
Yeah, the restaurant I based this Lakeside Supper Club on was a real restaurant in Prescott, Wisconsin called the Steamboat Inn, and I worked there as a teenager. My friend Pat Rowan got me the job, and his dad was a part owner and manager. So I got to see that. I was around it. But proximity in my life, no. The only thing I inherited from my parents was my mom's dream of being a published novelist herself. And she passed away at age 55, having never written a novel. So for me, the inheritance was finishing an arc, following through on her dream and merging it with mine to write her book, to fulfill her life and to keep her alive. So that at times feels like a tremendous amount of pressure. My character Julia in this book is actually based on me reckoning with that.
Wow.
So yeah, I felt like, you know, sometimes I'm sitting there and I feel like my mom's on my shoulder and I'm going like, what do you want me to do? You know, and other times I'm like, I got this, like, just come along for the ride and tell me where I'm screwing up. But literally in terms of like inheriting a business, no, I just was close to it. And I just did an event in Minnesota with Pat, which was really cool. And he got to talk a lot about that and how much he didn't want to work in a restaurant.
That's so cool. That must have been a great event.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and it was in a restaurant too. It was in a different
to be.
family-owned restaurant owned by a couple who have small children, who you know, just like, hey, for you kids, you know,
Get
like,
ready.
hey, like, get ready for this. Like, you're gonna be put to work as soon as you can clean forks. And yeah, because that was Pat's story. As I think he was 7 years old, as soon as he could like push a vacuum cleaner, he was put to work. You know?
Yeah, I didn't have, my parents didn't have but I mean, my dad did have a real estate company, and he had me get my real estate license before I went to college, which I never used. But I could use a computer and he couldn't, so he would be like, "Come into the office and put these listings in the computer for me."
Oh my god!
And I think he did kind of have a dream that I would take that over, but I quickly like just squashed that. But I think in so many ways, I think every parent has those wishes for their children, and I think in your teens and your 20s, you're kind of trying them on and figuring those out. But I think your 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever, you do start to, no, I'm going in my own direction.
Yeah. Or you'd return to something that you had rejected, perhaps. I've seen that too. I've seen children come back to their parents and willingly take over the family business, having rejected it when they were younger. Yeah, I've seen that too. In my
I mean, I wish my family did have like a cool restaurant that I could bartend at every once in a while, just for stories. But I don't think it's that casual. That
Okay, maybe one more question, and then we'll sign books if there is one.
Are your girls interested in writing?
Oh, good question.
They're both really good writers, but it's not
How old
like
are
they're 16 and 20.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're both outside.
Well,
like,
you have them when you were 12?
Thank you for
that. Wow, 16 and 20. I have a 4-year-old. I know I started late, but yeah, wow. That's awesome.
Thank you. They're both excellent writers. Like at like 13, they could write things that I could never have written, even when I was 25.
Oh, that's cool.
So they have it. They have that talent there, but they're like well-rounded. They're good in a lot of things. They're good in science and math and things like that. So they do their own things. But I wish they would write, because they're just so good at it.
That's very nice. Well, thanks so much for coming on a Friday night.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We have plenty of books up here to purchase, and we can get you some Sharpies to sign as well.